All right, everyone. It is about 2 after 7, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the second of 5 of our series for our Livestock Producer Education Nights. We're excited to have Dr. Ryan Larson, our agricultural economist specialist on campus, with us tonight. Dr. Larson is extremely knowledgeable and has been a keystone to a lot of the things that we've been able to accomplish. I know here in Box Elder County and many other counties, as he's been able to help create useful tools for your operations and be able to provide well-versed information, especially on the subject of what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is insurance. I'm joined by my co-host tonight, Jake Hadfield, who's the Extension faculty in Cache County. And what we're going to do is get started by turning the time first over to Jake, who's going to do some housekeeping items referring to a survey. And then after that, we'll turn the time over to Dr. Larson. We encourage you throughout the program, if you have questions, go ahead and open up your questions into the chat box and we'll try to moderate those. We will also have some time following Dr. Larson's presentation where it can be an open Q&A. So you may have some things maybe that aren't necessarily pertaining to the presentation, but maybe are very focused on economics or those types of things that maybe Dr. Larson could answer for you. So turn the time over to Jake. Again, thanks everybody for being here tonight.
Hey everyone, glad to see you guys here. We just wanted to remind you, as an extension, you're used to going to extension events and having surveys and evaluations. But please, before you leave, we're going to post an evaluation in the chat kind of near the end of Dr. Larson's talk. And please fill that out before you leave. It just helps us to be able to keep these programs running, as well as keep them up to date with current information that you guys are all interested in. I'm actually also going to post a link. We right now are trying to develop some mental health resources for farmers and ranchers, just due to the fact that we've seen a recent rise in that. So I'm actually going to put that survey in right now. If you guys wouldn't mind just filling that out if you get a chance. I mean, we're taking all kinds of responses about mental health. So please go ahead and feel free to fill that out as well. But really, before this evaluation is over, or before this presentation is over, please fill out the evaluation for this program. Thanks.
Is that my cue?
That's your cue.
Oh, that's my cue. Okay. Did you give me hosting rights if I share my screen?
You know I did.
Oh, sweet. Let me hurry and go and share that. I apologize. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Looks great.
Okay. Oh, welcome. Appreciate y'all joining us tonight. Hopefully I can give you something that's worthwhile, that you can take something home with you. That's my goal. Is, you know, there's a lot to cover, and hopefully if there's just a couple things that you can take away, that's good. So let's tonight's the topic is insuring against drought. And so let me preface this by saying there's many techniques to handle drought, and the economic side is one of them. So I'm going to approach that, but Dr. Thacker, Dr. Garcia will also come from this from the range side and the animal side as well. So this is really part one of three as you think about preparing for drought. So keep that in mind as we go through this. So I want to talk about 4 key things today. It's not all going to be about insurance. That's going to be a key piece, but I want to understand how we develop a drought plan, how that relates to current market conditions. I want to understand and show you guys some cool data that we're collecting that helps us understand the relationship between drought and forage availability. That's always been a question is, oh, we're in a drought, but really, what does that mean? And so I want to show you some cool data that we just barely received that we're starting to utilize. And then we're going to get into insurance and finish off with that. So we should be here just about 3 hours, nothing too major. So get comfortable, buckle up. Let's get down to it. So I'm a football fanatic. I was a wide receiver in a lineman's body is what I always tell Dr. Garcia. But I love football. I love the strategy. I love all of that. Here we see one of my least favorite teams, though, the Denver Broncos, in a goal line situation. Do you think they get to the goal line without a plan? Right? I guarantee that coaching staff has thought about all different kinds of scenarios, different kind of strategies to handle this first and goal at the 3-yard line. So that's the key question tonight is, what is your plan? We're really sitting at the 3-yard line. We can see what's coming ahead of us, not with 100% certainty, but we kind of know what the conditions are. So we need to be aware and put a plan together and be proactive instead of reactive as we go through the next few months. So this is a chart, a graph that came out of a journal article that I really I think is useful. So there's proactive and reactive drought management strategies. Reactive would be, okay, we know this happened, so now what are we going to do? Proactive is saying, okay, we think this is going to happen, let's prepare for it. So when we look at some of these proactive strategies, rest pastures, stock conservatively, those are some of these proactive strategies that you can kind of think about. Some of these others that we're starting to research and look at is incorporating yearling livestock and using weather predictions. Those are other 2 types of strategies that are limited use, but have a high potential to benefit producers. Then we look at the drought response over on this side. Let me see if my pen's working here, right? So here's our drought response. So this was a survey done to Wyoming producers. And with this reduced forage demand, 80% of them reduced their herd size, 47% weaned their calves early, 24% they sold retained yearling livestock. On the bottom side, here we have increased forage supply. So 63% of them purchased feed, 42% rented additional pasture, 27% moved livestock to another location, 15% placed livestock in a feedlot. Now, one of these, this was published in 2014. One key piece that's missing from this is PRF, which I'll talk about, pasture range and forage insurance. That did not exist in 2014, and that truly has changed. When we look at this, apply for government assistance, PRF is a great insurance program that we'll talk about that has benefits as we go through some of these periods. So that's the key here. Think about being proactive versus reactive. We don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive. So this came out of the Northern Plains Climate Hub. This is making a drought plan, and it really has 4 pieces. Number 1 is assess, 2 is plan, 3 is do, 4 is learn and adapt. And tonight, I really am going to focus on the assess portion. We want to observe, determine risk, make an inventory. Those are kind of the things that we want to determine and help to assess as we go forward. Hopefully that'll lead you to setting up that plan. So hopefully this will help set a foundation for you to begin setting up that plan. So is there a question? I apologize. So let's talk. I want to spend just a few minutes looking at some of the key market factors that we're watching here. One of the things to watch is this right there, right? We knew that inventory was dropping, and we saw that in 2021, it actually dropped by 0.2%, which is not a ton, but it is an example of herds are decreasing. There's there's a minor amount of liquidation going on. So we can see that downward trend in that January 1st cattle inventory. So as we watch this, we know herds are decreasing, and we know that we're going into a drought scenario in a lot of Western states. So keep that in mind, that there's these two factors that could be dramatic influential players as we go throughout 2021. When we look at the calf crop, so in 2021, that calf crop was actually down by 1.3%. So, right, not only did we see total crop, but we also saw a reduced size in that calf crop. So inventory supplies are tightening, which typifies that, you know, there's a change occurring within the system. Okay, so when we look at this, how does this compare to where we've been? So this chart just shows what we have defined as these cattle cycles. So we have 1938 to 49 down here on the bottom. Then we have 1949 to 1958. We have 1958 to 1967, 67 to 79 up top there, kind of the boom in livestock, 79 to 90, where we start to see those livestock herds decreasing. 1990, slight increase again, right? And then 2004 to 2014, which we're going to watch really close because that's going to follow where we are. And then, of course, the current one we're in 2014 to 2021 in dark blue. And you can see that dark blue is starting to right, as I've already shown, that we're seeing reduced numbers in inventory. So that cycle is coming on the backward slope. So what does that mean? What does that mean as we're seeing that, and what relationship does that have with prices? So this is cattle inventory in orange, cattle price in gray. So I want you to notice a few things here. So price goes up, inventory goes up, price goes down. Inventory goes up, price goes down. There's a pattern that's presenting itself, as you can see, right? We're starting to see these patterns, right? When in those peaks of inventory, troughs of prices. We had this period right here, 2014, right? Coming off the great drought in Texas. Of course, we saw that dramatic reduction in inventory. And then we saw inventories rise, and we saw those prices soften. So what can we learn from this then? So as we're watching these cattle inventories drop, does it guarantee that prices will go up? Not necessarily, but it can tell us, give us a signal onto what to expect from prices. When we look at some of these changes, you'll notice if I were a stock trader, I'd say, wow, there's a lot of volatility. You can see these dramatic peaks, both on the top end and low end, right? So there's cattle inventory, and this is percentage change. So take that in mind. This is percentage change. This isn't raw numbers. So this is percentage change. And you can see those cattle inventories fluctuate quite a bit on a percentage change basis. So when we start to look at this, then we graph this over percentage change in prices. So this yellow is percentage change in cattle price. So then we remember the previous slide, we said, wow, cattle inventory changes dramatically. But when we put the prices on top of that, now we see, right? So there's almost a 42% change in price. There's a 15% reduction, a 32% reduction. So you can start to see the dramatic volatility that's in cattle prices. Volatility is just another term that we use for risk. So keep that in mind, that there's a dramatic amount of risk both in prices and in inventory, and inventory is leading into that. So still, what can we learn from all of this? So when we look at this from a return scenario, so this is estimated returns out of USDA Livestock Marketing Information Center, we can start to see these cycles, right? So we're going to cycle up, interesting enough, but then we cycle down. Then we come into a period we can start to see these periods, but these periods of low profitability, right? They correspond to these increases in inventory, and conversely the high prices. So we know that there's a relationship between inventory and prices. When we look at this on a statewide basis, when we look at that change in total calf crop, just draw a line through the West. There's a 20%, 20, so that's 1,000 heads. So reduction in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Utah, California, I mean, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico. I mean, there's dramatic changes in the West in that calf crop. So that West has really been changing. Really, the only places that we're seeing those is Texas and Oklahoma. We saw that dramatic increase, which is offsetting some of these other ones, but the West has really seen that dramatic change in calf crops. When we look at this on a 10-year basis, right? 10-year basis, because of that drought in 2012, we see Texas still down from where they used to be. The rest is, besides some of these states, are relatively, where they were. No major changes in some of these local. Idaho, of course, which is taking in some of that, but on a 10-year basis, we can see some of those changes that have occurred. So let's look at current market situation. So I'm going to go from kind of a regional to more localized price. So in red here, we have our average 2015 to 2019 average price, 2020 in the dots. You can see 2020 was below that 5-year average, and 2021 is really starting out in that, right, still below, kind of following that 2020. Keep in mind, though, there's some factors in play right now as you look at the futures market and with these inventories that provide a little optimism that we may bump up to a little higher. Same type of scenario when we look at those 700 to 800 pounds, below where we were in 2020 and still well below that average that we saw 2015 to 2019. Now, 2015 is skewing some of that a little bit. 2015 was a high year, so keep that in mind. So now let's jump. So this is where we can kind of start. Okay, what does this mean? So this is Salina livestock. So what I've done here, this is the livestock data coming, the auction data coming out of Salina. So we have 2016, 2017, 18, 19. So 5 years of data. And that's mapped over time. So it's mapped over the calendar year. And I want you to look at some of these. So at the beginning of the year, this January, February, March, there's a 142 average. Now you can say the flaw of the averages, right? We know averages are not perfect, but it gives us an idea of where those prices were. So when we look at that 142 average, and then we look at kind of our selling time, we're at 137. So roughly a $5 difference from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So that's kind of an average difference. Now, if we take that 137 average and we put a 95% confidence interval and just say, well, 95% of the data can be encompassed in that, we can look at a range of prices from 126 on the low end to 148 on the high end. And that's really being driven by that using those early in the year, January, February, March prices to help us understand those fall prices. But if I was a producer, I'd be taking that 126 to 148, putting it into my budget and saying, am I able to break even at 126? Am I able to break even at 148? If not, what do I need to do to break even? What do I have to, what price, what cost can I cut? What can I do to get to a break even point? Now, I wanted to look at this even a little closer. So I took a little longer data period and I said, so this is the difference between that January, February, March and the October prices. So you can see this is when the price went down over the year. And then this is when price actually increased over the year, 2014. I don't want to call it an outlier, but dramatic change. Then 15, we started 15 really high, and then it lost over the year. And then 18, 19, 20, we saw the price drop as the year goes on. So that to me gives me an indication that we can start estimating, at least figuring out kind of what that fall price will be. So forecasting that fall 2021, given that January prices, right, kind of an average price coming out, there's that 142 mark. We can look at this forecasted October 133, using that differences, then 123 on the low end, 142, just using a little different statistical method to estimate that. But once again, that gives us a good starting point to look at our break evens. Now, are these prices guaranteed? As soon as I say this, we'll probably go home and those will change, but this just gives you a good starting point to start figuring out those break evens, because that's really what's going to drive a lot of these insurance and drought decisions. So this is the range conditions. So you can see that range conditions, I'm transitioning now into some of that data that I talked about. So we can see range conditions have deteriorated. So this is 2020 right here. Over 50% of that range in the West, in that Western region, is considered to be poor to very poor. So we know that we're not going into a good, unless we have a dramatic change in the snowfall and we have a wet spring, but there's a high likelihood that we could have poor forage conditions as we go into this year. Drought monitors, right? This is the most recent one. You can see Utah just hammered as we look at that. One area to keep in mind though, as we watch this, is that panhandle area, right? As we watch a major, that could have some major impacts if that doesn't change as the year goes on. Yeah, just tell us where we used to be. I don't need to do that anymore. So we started looking at these droughts and said, well, what's the length? So these are the ones that have been defined by the Climate Center as droughts, and then that drought monitor. So this is the consecutive weeks of drought in Box Elder. So I just looked at Box Elder County. So you can see everything from 2 weeks, pretty severe, or we can go to 2012 over 200 weeks of consecutive, what they call consecutive drought weeks, right? And then this one's over almost to that 160 mark. And then this one right here, right, we're about that 35 week consecutive. So when we look at droughts, it's not only the severity, but more importantly, that length of drought is a key factor, right? And keep that in mind as we look at some of this forage data, right? The implications of making a bad decision this year and then having another poor year next year just makes that and exacerbates that whole forage issue. Okay, so this is kind of fun, this data. This is kind of probably where the nerd in me is coming out, but that's okay. My wife makes fun of me, my kids make fun of me, Josh makes fun of me, but that's how it goes. So this data is gathered from the grass, what's considered grassland. So this is pounds of forage available. So they've taken and gathered all this data, used these models to predict, estimate it. So it's not perfect, but it's still really interesting data, still really good data. When we look at that, I have data from 1986 to 2019. Over that time period, 150 pounds of forage per acre. So this is perennial and annual grasses. So just on this, so this is going to be different for your grazing or whatnot, but just for this data, this is what the average is. And you can see the implications of some of those prolonged droughts. Occasionally we have some of these periods of wet, right? And of course, right here, and then 2019 was a good year, but you can see what happens to forage, the actual amount of forage and how it relates. When we look at this a little closer, I just wanted to throw this graph up to make it as messy as possible, but let's look at it a little different. So here's the 10-year average, 20-year average, and the overall average. So this is the amount of forage in that month. So if we were to sum each one, that'd give you the cumulative forage over the whole year. But you can see it follows that pattern, that green up pattern, as Dr. Thacker calls it, that natural green up pattern in April, May, right, when we have our best growing conditions. So you can see the amount, right around there, that 50 pounds per acre in May. And then, of course, as that summer goes on, as we lose moisture, precipitation, we lose that. But this is the pattern of growth. What does this look like in a drought year? So here's 2012, 2013, 2 really bad years. So you can see that, right? Almost just under 35 pounds, just above 35 pounds. Overall, that's a 36% reduction from the average. So a 36% loss of forage. So what does that mean then? So if we take that, let's just take we're grazing 75 head on an allotment at 50% utilization, right? We always want to leave a little bit. So 50% utilization on a normal year. So with that 35% reduction in forage, the AUMs drop, and now at 50% utilization, you should only graze 58 head. But that's key word there is should, right? Should. That's the key word. If you maintain 75 head, you would be at 70% utilization in forage. And that's, according to Dr. Thacker, at 70%, that's roughly leaving 1.5 inches of forage. Now, all of you know, we don't want to be leaving 1.5 inches. That's not good for anything. But think of that 1.5 inches. You ate it down into a bad spot. What happens next year if we go into a bad precip year again? Just think of how that problem would compound. So think about this. What happens to body condition under these scenarios? If we're grazing 75 head under that, and remember, this is already what are the forage impacts of forage quality. Should you reduce your herd size or buy additional feed? So this is some of those proactive. As you develop your drought plan, you need to be proactive and be thinking about some of these key questions. Do you buy additional feed? We will be putting out a spreadsheet here quickly that will help you analyze these specific decisions. Should you buy feed? Should you reduce your herd? To help you answer some of these questions. But this reduction in forage is really the key question as we go forward. Okay, so let's talk PRF. So hopefully that motivated us to understand that we need help managing some of this drought risk, and really PRF is the key. Now, this is a kind of an awkward time to talk about PRF, just because you sign up for it the year in advance. So hopefully if you didn't purchase it last year, this will give you some information as you're making this decision in November of this coming year. But good information is good information. So let's think about, recall that PRF it divides the state into these roughly 17 mile by 17 mile grids. And within these grids, they gather the weather information based on the center of that grid, and then they find at least the 4 nearest weather stations. Now, this is problematic in Utah, problematic in any area with dramatic elevation changes. So some areas struggle because of these dramatic, that the weather stations are snowtail sites or whatnot. But that's the methodology that we use to estimate the precipitation for a given area. Now, the 3 key decisions the grower has to make is the number of acres. And this can be the max amount owned and operated. So allotments or whatever would fit into this. You must ensure 2 intervals, and these intervals are 2-month periods. So January, February, March, April would be considered 2 intervals. So you'd have to pick that. And then you have to pick a coverage level. So all the way from 70 to 90%. Those are the key decisions that you have to make when looking at this insurance. Now, let me see if I can quickly, I need to go to this website. Okay, so this is farmanalysis.usu.edu. So this is a site we've put together that has some good tools: pasture range and forage insurance tool, dairy margin coverage, standing silage price tool. So this is kind of our landing place for some of these tools that we're developing. So we're just going to use this pasture range and forage. So this is the tool that we're using. Josh, are you seeing my screen correctly? Can I, or is it still my PowerPoint?
Presentation, Ryan.
It's still on my presentation? No, I was afraid of that. Let me hurry and fix that. I'm sorry. Where did you go? Okay, now are you seeing that?
Yes, that looks better.
Okay, sorry about that. So this is just a simple tool that we've put together that'll help you tremendously. So I'm just going to go state. I'm going to go Utah, county, Box Elder. I'm just going to pick just one of these grids. If you don't know your grid, you can just click on that question mark and it'll take you to the USDA site that'll help you identify that grid. But we're just going to pretend like we know our grid. Now, once you've picked your grid, you can go in and start looking at some of that historical rainfall data. So you can see here, here's our rainfall patterns, yearly rainfall patterns, and you can just mess around and get rid of years and just look at certain years. So if we wanted to look at just 2012, we can just click on those and it just eliminates those years. So there's a lot of cool tools that you can do and just analyze with this tool, all the way from monthly premium rates. So each period has a premium. There's your indemnity rates. And then you can look at monthly return rates, which months have the highest return. And so this right here is based on the 5-year, 10-year, 20-year average, and then the most current year. So from this website, it has simplified some of that, but it gives you some really fun, really informative options as you analyze some of that rainfall associated with that. So I'm gonna go back to the policy. If I go back here, no, we'll pass on that. So coverage, we're gonna do 90% coverage, keep that 100. Let's just do, we'll just do 1,000 acres. And then we got to pick our interval. So let's go June, July, and we have to allocate 100%. So we can do, I got to get back to my keyboard here. We'll go 60% in June, July. And then let's go April, May, we'll go 40%. That has to, but those two have to add up. And then if you want to add additional, you can add more intervals. You just have to reduce the percentage in each of those. And you can't put more than 60% in any interval. That's the maximum amount that you can allocate. So once I've decided that, really I've made all the decisions necessary. I've picked my coverage level, acres, my grid, and my intervals. So then I just hit submit, and it runs all the calculations for me. So here's my base value for that county, total production. Now at that 90%, I have a 51% subsidy on that premium. So that makes it pretty nice, because we can see that total premium is $19.29, but the producer premium is $9.45. So interestingly enough, when we look at 2020, so this is 2020 data, this didn't pay. So I would have had to pay that premium of $9.45.47. And you can look over there and see that, right, none of those months were influenced. But when we look at this historical summary, so that was 2020. When we look at 2 out of the past 5 years, it's paid, so roughly 40% of the time. 6 out of 10, so 60%. When we look at a 20-year time period, 14 out of those 20 years had a positive return, or roughly a 99% return on that premium. So understand that you can't just analyze any insurance product a year at a time. You really have to look at that as a long-term risk management strategy. But this is a great site. I think it's what we try to do is simplify it and give you enough information. So you could go back in and change. What if we wanted to change? Let's change this interval to September, October. And let's change this one to November, December. If we hit submit, so you can still see some of those. It's still, and in this case, it doesn't matter what interval we choose. But in some areas, those intervals it's highly sensitive. When we look at that historical, we can see that those other intervals were actually paid more often than the ones we've picked now. So these are the kind of information that we'd love you to use on this site, is to help you as you analyze and try to figure out if PRF is right for you, that you could run this analysis and go through as many scenarios as you want. Okay, any questions on that, on PRF? I think that's one of the great tools that available to Utah producers. I hope that if you don't understand it, please let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, let's go back. See if I can get to where I was. And please, if you have any questions on PRF that you may have. Everybody's probably asleep. Well, it's okay. So the other one I wanted to briefly talk about tonight, PRF is a great insurance tool. And also I want to talk about LRP, livestock revenue protection. LRP, they've made some changes to LRP, made it more affordable and made it a little more appealing to a lot of producers. So really what livestock risk protection does is it protects you against that price slide as the year goes on. So you lock in a price at the beginning of the year based on when you market your cows, and then you purchase this, and it really is a way of buying an option, just a more inexpensive way. And you can guarantee from 70 to 100%. The price, you have to understand though, is it's not a localized price. It's based on CME futures prices. So it's a national level price based on that futures price. So when you lock in, it's based on that. And then when they calculate that ending value, it's based on that CME. So keep that in mind. It's not Salina livestock auction prices driving that. When we look at that, so some changes that have occurred, so you can see that old subsidy in blue, right? We can see some of the changes that have occurred. That has occurred within that, those subsidies, right? So from that 95% plus coverage, the only one that hasn't changed is that 70 to 80%. So keep that in mind, that those other ones, they tried to make a little more cost effective by increasing those subsidies. So coverage is available up to 52 weeks. Like I said earlier, this is similar to a put option. The nice thing is it's a simpler way of doing it. Put options can be a little complicated. You got to work with a broker to understand those. There's a cost associated with this. This is a little simpler way of doing a similar risk management option. So remember, this creates a floor price. Now, if that price drops below that floor, then it engages the insurance. If it stays above, then you pay your premium and you go on. So really, it's compensating you for that risk of those price declines. So LRP is available for feeder calves, 8 different types: steers, heifers, Brahman on the dairy side, less than 600 pounds, 600 to 900 pounds target weight, and fed cattle. So it's available for those. Available coverage prices range approximately 70 to 100% of CME futures price. And then you can see these different policy lengths all the way from 13 weeks to 52 weeks. You can insure 1 to 3,000 head with a thick 6,000 year maximum in any 1 year. So you can start to see that. On the fed cattle side, all but identical. So if you're on the fed side, then all but identical to the feeder. So to buy LRP, right, you have to work with a certified crop insurance agent. So you need someone that can help you complete this transaction. The one complicated factor about this LRP insurance is that it's changing. Every day there's a new quote. Because it's based on that CME futures price, that's changing every day. So it's kind of it's a little tricky because that quote changes every day. So you may go in one day and say, well, let's look at LRP insurance and look at it and say, well, let me think about it. You may come back a week later and it may have completely changed. So it's a very dynamic, fast moving tool. So once you're ready, then you file all the paperwork with that insurance agent. And you must own that livestock when filing that specific coverage endorsement. That specific coverage endorsement is the key tool, the key contract that specifies the coverage price or your floor, how long it's going to be, that ending period, the number of animals, target weight, and the premium due. So that specific coverage endorsement is key when you're looking at this. Now, if you go to RMA's website, you can see this every day. They post this, so you can see the crop year. So this would be 2021. Here's our coverage price, right? Because here's our expected ending value. So we're at 99% of that. Our end date would be January 22nd. And of course, we don't know that yet. So there's no actual ending value, but you can come through and you can see all these different endorsement lengths, type of steers, type of cattle, and look at those prices yourself. Now, if we looked at a quick example, let me see if I can get that up to the top. So this is just a simple example. I have 100 head. My target weight at the end would be 700 pounds. My coverage price is 128, and I have 100% insured shared. So my total insured value would just simply be that 89,600. My rate, my premium rate. So my total premium would be 4,317. That I get a 25% subsidy on this specific rate. So my premium out of pocket would be that 32, 38, 37. So that would be, at the end of the day, how much would I be on the hook for? Now let's go through this. So the target price, our coverage price was 128. That actual ending value was 117. So we saw that price actually declined over that time period. We dropped 10. So our total indemnity was at 74.83. So when we look at this then, our indemnity was 74.83. Our premium was 32. So our actual in pocket return would be that 4,244.63. So that's in this scenario when we see prices drop over the year. Traditionally, they'll drop as we look. The majority of the time, we see those prices dropping over the year, but then sometimes, right, like 2015, 2014, we saw them rise. So this is not a without any risk type product, right? You're really insuring on that price slide. So as we finish here, watch key market signals, right? I think there's some key things happening in livestock that we need to keep watching. Drought being one of them, inventory size, and of course, policies. We're always watching policy. Now is the time to be developing that drought plan. You need to be proactive. I think there's enough data out there right now that's showing that we need to be prepared for what's coming. So please start developing that drought plan, and we'll continue to talk about this in the next few weeks. I think there's some great insurance tools right now. Producers, as we saw, there's a lot of volatility in prices. PRF, LRP are two great tools that you can use to start managing some of that risk. So with that, I believe I've put a lot of people to sleep, hopefully not. So let me end that discard. I saw a chat. Josh, I will share with you this presentation. And then if you can, I don't know, I can either email this guy, or if others are interested, be happy to send that.
We also, Dr. Larson, we have this that will be recorded, and it will be available for reviewing right back where you joined the link tonight. So
okay, perfect. Thank you, Josh.
You can also see that, and those extension faculty that are on here, any specialists, you can refer everyone back to the website too to review all of this. Sometimes it's better when we can see those slides and have Dr. Larson explaining them. So we appreciate Dr. Larson. We'll now open up the field for any questions. If you'd like to unmute your microphone and ask your questions, or go ahead and type them into the chat box. We do remind everyone to please, Jake's going to put a survey link into the chat to help us. What this does, it'll help us with our ability to understand your needs and better serve you for future topics of interest. And it also helps us as we move forward with our other programming. So Jake's got that survey link right there. We'll open up the field for questions. Go ahead and unmute your microphone and make Dr. Larson sweat a little bit.
It doesn't take much.
Dr. Larson, Randall Violet here. LRP looks like a pretty good deal for cattle producers, but what about our sheep producers? Is there anything out there for lamb protection?
Oh, it's a great one for sheep as well. It's underutilized because it's available for pork and sheep. And so it's definitely, if you're a sheep producer, you should be, I'm not saying you should be buying it, but you should be taking a really close look at LRP.
So what marks, because their lambs aren't on the CME, so what are they using for the basis then?
Oh, with lambs, they've got some type of index that they use to do that. I'm not 100% confident what it is, but I mean, they have a way of doing it.
Okay.
I can find that out, Randall. That's a good question. I always just look at it from the cattle side, but people I talk to that use it on the sheep, I've never, that's a good question, but I know it's useful on the sheep side as well.
Okay, good.
I don't know that it's available right now because of the reporting issues with the Mountain States Rosen plant. You know, maybe it's back up and going now that we have the 2 other plants, but there was a reporting issue. And so it was not available for a while.
Oh, I hope it is. I'll check that out.
See, it's a good thing you don't have a quiz tonight.
I should have done a quiz, Randall. I should have done a quiz.
You're never gonna let me live that one down. Sure.
Randall takes away my quiz before I can even offer it.
So a quick question, the agents that you use for PRF, you can also use for the LRP, or is that a different?
Nope. Same. It can be the same ones.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Same ones.
I know
Ryan.
I've
Oh.
seen some presentations on that PR, the range pasture for PRF program. And down here in this country where we're right on some state lines, it has created some issues. Are you aware of, a lot of these landowners own property in Arizona and in Utah, or in Nevada and Utah.
Yep.
That gets a little bit cantankerous, doesn't it? Or
Yeah, that causes a few issues, but the one thing that a producer can do though is pick, if those grids are contiguous, the producer can pick the grid that is most advantageous and use that grid for insurance purposes. So it is problematic. That's why I say you got to work with a good insurance agent that can walk you through and solve those issues. Because down on the Arizona, I mean, this year it's been a great year for PRF in some of those areas. Great year. You know, most years we'd rather have the forage, right? Always, we'd rather pay our premium and have the forage. But in years like this, PRF has been paying out really. It's been a great way to shore up some of those losses from the lost forage, which is its purpose. But yeah, those state lines do cause problems, Randall. But there's ways around. There's good insurance agent will solve that problem. I bet Jacob Holmgren has a question.
Hey, that might be true. I might have a question.
See, Jake's lucky. He starts the day with me and he ends the day with me. What a lucky guy.
Glad to see
I
Jake.
wouldn't have it any other way.
Jake, are you down the road from me right now, or are you somewhere else?
I'm up in Logan right now in my apartment. I'll probably be down that way this weekend though.
There you go.
But I was wondering, Ryan, do you have any other resources and stuff you can recommend? It's going to say for someone who's pretty new to it like myself, it's going to say there's a lot of the stuff you're referring to that I'm not even sure I would recognize. Do you have any links or books or anything you'd recommend?
What specific topics, Jacob?
Probably more on livestock and like, I don't know, some insurance programs, you know, the basics of livestock and stuff. I've always been in it, but I've never understood the business of it or been involved in the business of it. So
Yeah, the Risk Management Agency, RMA, that right. So these are insurance products coming out of the Risk Management Agency, but they're being sold by private. So they're developed privately, kind of owned by the government, and then sold privately. But the Risk Management Agency, there's a ton of information on their website, ton. So that would be a great place to start. Is looking at that.
that's awesome, Ryan. Thanks.
You bet, Jake. Sorry to call you out like that. That was unfair.
No, that's all good. I was actually going to ask a question. So, I mean, you just opened the floor for me.
Dave, the other thing that's coming, and Ryan mentioned this a little bit in his presentation, and I think he just quilted it right into what he was talking about. But he's working on a step-by-step program for drought loss. He talked about being able to put your inputs in and deciding whether you need to catch your herd or do different things management wise. And he's going to make that real quick, as he mentioned, and that's going to be kind of a step-by-step. So some of these things, like I look at them sometimes and I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. But Ryan's going to be making some things that are going to make it easy to go in and plug that information in to help with management decisions. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome, Josh.
Ryan, this is Boyd.
Hey, Boyd.
Have you done any comparisons of be interesting to see what operators are using, maybe NAP versus the RF, the pasture range and forage?
I don't know exactly, but when you look at number of acres utilized in Utah with PRF, it's just exploded. Like it literally has went from 0 to, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's really gained some serious traction. So I think more producers are using PRF now. Don't quote me on that, but I just think because it's more profitable in the most scenarios, they're utilizing PRF. But NAP is still a useful product, right? As you talk, Boyd, and you bring up a great point. FSA has some programs, right? And I should have crafted some of those in, but NAP is definitely one that, right, that should be in your toolbox as a producer, as you think about some of these optional programs. Does that answer that question, Boyd?
So can a producer have NAP and this other insurance?
Oh, I was afraid you're going to ask that. I off the top of my head, I thought it was yes, but I can't guarantee that. I thought you could, but I don't want to guarantee that. I'd have to double check that, Boyd, on whether they can do both. I can't remember off the top of my head. Some of these can be combined, and I cannot remember it's PRF and NAP that can be combined. Probably could Google that real quick, but I'll need to double check that before you quote me on that.
I don't know about the NAP specifically, but I know the other FSA programs are separate and you can do both. I was actually working on the LFP drought through FSA today, and then we're also participating in PRF.
Okay, thank you. Here you
So
go.
one of the nice things about the FSA programs, they're relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
For that insurance. But you're right, the PRF, when it pays, it pays really well.
Hey, Ryan,
Yeah,
on
Jimmy.
those resources that you showed that I can't remember the correct name for the insurance, but the one that's online, is that on a USDA or is that on USU site?
So the first one, the analysis tool, that PRF is a USU site.
Okay.
Yep, that's one that we host, and those are the tools we developed.
Cool. Awesome.
So, yeah, those are ours.
That tool is really cool. I haven't ever seen that before. So
yeah, and we've been modifying it. This year we added more states, more graphs, and so each year we're tweaking it, and as we get feedback from people. So, I mean, is it perfect? No, but it's still really useful and beneficial, I think, because when you go to the PRF site on RMA and you try and do it, it gets a little complicated. And I think it's not very intuitive to start analyzing that. So we tried to make it more intuitive for a producer, just to be able, they can do it from there. You can access that from your phone, from anything, and it works great.
So Dr. Larson, your tools that you've set up are more just for the educational to help producers understand the program? And then do you hand them off or encourage them to find an agent? Or do you have that ability to sign them up as well?
No. I'm extension, so I'm a neutral party. I don't tell you to buy anything. I tell you, let's analyze this as much as possible. And then you decide with your agent if you want to go buy it. So yeah, I hand that off. I can't encourage you to do it. I think it's a good tool that the producer should truly analyze, but yeah, I'm not an insurance agent.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's what I thought, but I thought I'd just double check.
And you know, that right there, just to point out, is a really good resource and tool. I mean, for those that are on here, when Dr. Larson says, hey, reach out if you have any questions or whatever, you know, he runs those analytical programs and can figure out, you know, and give you a non-biased opinion on what might be the very best. You know, you go to an insurance agent, they want you to buy their insurance, right? And sometimes they're a good deal and sometimes they're not. And that's one of the benefits that we have, an extension of being non-biased. We can strip it down and look at the raw information and do our best to do it. And multiple times I've had some of our constituents we served here in our county that have had questions regarding this type of thing, and I'm able to just shoot Dr. Larson an email. He's able to take the information and help them solve that. So, you know, that's a really, really valuable resource that you have there available to somebody that's extremely smart and well versed in those areas to help you out.
Smart
So,
might be a
Dr.
stretch.
Yeah, I would say you're getting close if you're not there already. This is Jason Aiken. I'm an agent, insurance agent down in Cedar City, and I sell the PRF. And with that program that you guys have got put together there looks like it is just as refined as any other program that they've got out there in the insurance world. And so that is a good tool that you've been able to put together there. And heck, I would even utilize it to show clients, just because it is simplistic. That's the thing that gets a little bit too overbearing, is when you start getting into some of the other programs that people have put together, software programs that put together, they're too complex. And so that what you've put together there really is the best thing to use, just when it's simple like that and it's easier to explain and understand. So and it's good to be able to send people to something like that so that they can do a little bit of their homework first, so that they know what they're getting into, and they can kind of play with it themselves and understand what the options are. So
No, I appreciate that. And that's really our goal, is to make it as simple, right? We said, let's boil this down to the key decisions, just to help producers understand the easiest way to analyze this. So, so that they can have good conversations with you as the insurance agent, right? Because it's better for both of you. If they have some information and you come in with your expertise, that's just a much better conversation.
yeah, oh, for sure. For sure. And one thing that I always try to explain to people when they're looking at that PRF is my biggest thing is, don't just look at 2 intervals, look at all 12, and then look at 2, and look at all the different spectrums in between.
Yep.
And try to figure out what's going to best work for your operation. Don't just plan on insuring two intervals, because that might not be the ideal way to manage your risk in your area. In some areas, it may be 2 intervals is going to be your best way to do it. But one thing that when you start narrowing it down to just the 2 intervals, you can really get to the point where I think, Josh, you mentioned that, you know, the insurance agent is trying to get you to buy the biggest policy, but that may not be the best way for you to cover your risk. And so if you can see the difference between insuring 2 intervals versus 6 intervals, and look at those different grids and see how they, or at least the different tables of what pays out over the last, 10 years and stuff. That's the best way to look at it, is through different intervals and stuff. So no, that's a cool tool, great tool.
Yeah. And Jason, you bring up a great point. And a lot of people were using PRF as a revenue generator, right? It's a risk management tool and it needs to be analyzed as such. If you're trying simply only to maximize profit or return from that, you're right. You're kind of playing with fire. So I think you're exactly right. Understanding how you manage your risk through those intervals, not, okay, what's the most we can make off of those intervals?
Correct. Yep. And that's, it just depends on your individual operation. I mean, if that's what you're using it for, is to make the most amount of money, it is. You're going to have to find the 2 intervals that are going to pay you the most. But guess what? You're also going to pay the most
Yeah.
if it rains. So,
Yep.
so it's a risk and reward type program. And if you're truly trying to manage your risk, 9 times out of 10, you're going to insure more than just 2 intervals. It's going to be 4 or 5, and maybe even up to 6.
Yep. Good point. But if any of you have questions, please reach out to me. Jason, I'll send you, I can send you that. We can make that available to you, that presentation. Anybody else, Josh makes that available. But please, yeah, there's my email. Reach out to me anytime. So.
All right. Well, again, we'd like to thank Dr. Larson for attending and presenting all this helpful information to us. Again, this is our second of 5 series. Next week, we're going to have Dr. Matt Garcia, who's going to be joining us and talking about strategies for your beef herd in a drought situation. And so there's going to be a lot of great information there. It'll be, again, 7 o'clock in the same website. There will be a link there. You can join us there to listen to Dr. Garcia. Thanks again, Dr. Larson. Appreciate everyone and hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.